All right? They do not preach that their God will rouse them a little before the nuts work loose. And more generally, how to allocate resources when the real deadline is unknown. They do not preach that their God will rouse them a little before the nuts work loose. That's from a poem. I don't read poetry very often, but it was quoted in a science fiction book, and so I had to read that poem. Got to read that poem. By Rudyard Kipling. Never heard of him before this. The Sons of Martha. Like 1907. And it was quoted in the book a couple of times, The Legacy of Heorot, which I did read, Audible, by Niven et al. And I think a question that goes hand in hand with that is how to allocate resources when the real deadline is unknown. What's a real deadline? Not the one that you set for yourself or someone else set for you. This is Retraice segment number 20. It's Sunday, October 16th, 2020 at 11:27 p.m. Eastern Time. And Retraice is about what's going on out there. Retrace, not retrace or whatever the heck I just said. Man, I do that a lot at the beginning of these things. I don't know why. The deadline problem. I don't know. So there's probably some intellectual authority out there who's given this idea that we're going to talk about here a different name, maybe a better name. I don't know. I can't imagine a better name than the deadline problem. But I don't know who has done this, who has talked about this. And I'm not even sure I'm going to clearly articulate it, but I'll do my best here. Okay. The deadline problem. What is the deadline problem? I should have opened with that. Okay. I'm looking at how I walk through it. Let me just put it to you in a sort of series of statements that almost sort of form a logical chain, but sort of get at the idea. And something I call the logic of the fog, or the fog of the future. So just hear this out, and then we'll get more serious. Statement number 1, deadlines are in the future. Great. Statement number 2, the future is largely uncertain. Statement number 3, the deadlines, which are in the future, are largely uncertain. Deadlines are in the future is uncertain. That's a syllogism. Right? Statement number 4, if deadlines are uncertain, allocating resources is uncertain. And finally, allocating resources, statement number 5, allocating resources changes deadlines. That's not an argument. Part of it is, but part of it is also sort of findings. I don't know. How do you allocate? The deadline problem is what I said at the top. That is really the best articulation of it that I've got so far. That we don't have a way of allocating resources when the real deadline is unknown. That's a problem. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that we don't muddle through. We don't get by. We don't manage to allocate resources despite the deadline problem. I'm saying this is serious. We just talked about nature is not effing around. And if you think about it, I mean, let's talk about the hypotheses from that perspective. Nature is not effing around. What is that? It's easy. I don't have to construct some complicated elaboration of the idea. Hypothesis number 1, space. Humans are now technologically capable of living in space. Nature is not effing around. What does that mean against hypothesis number 1? We're now able to live in space. Well, our environment has expanded dramatically. Space is the rest. Our environment before space. Some people say, gosh, who said this? No, I think it was, who's the guy? Zubrin? I think he said it in one of his, Case for Mars or Case for Space, that our environment is not the Earth. It's actually the solar system. If we want to think about what our, how should we properly demarcate a boundary, our environment, it should be the solar system, not the Earth, because big things happen in the solar system all the time that affect us, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But we're now capable of living in space. Now, we haven't left the solar system, but it's just sort of a matter of life support systems and resource grabbing along the way, and maybe some hibernation or something like that. That changes the game. Oh, okay, I didn't even think about this. So it's right next to me. No, it's not right next to me because I just put it away. Darn it. I'm drawing a blank. What is the Death's End is the third book, and it is The Dark Forest is the second book. And what's the first book? Crap, this is embarrassing. I really love this series, and I don't remember. Darn it. Hang on. I do have access to the internet. It's just because I'm on camera, I forget these things. I don't forget these things when I'm working through my life. It's Remembrance of Earth's Past series. The three-body problem. Sorry. I love the three-body problem, and it's just because I'm on camera that I forget. The three-body problem. One of the things that happens I don't want, spoiler alert. If you haven't read the three-body problem series, spoiler alert. One of the things that happens is that essentially some humans become native, not necessarily by birth, but by adaptation within lifetimes, not evolutionary adaptation, but cultural and psychological adaptation, become native to space. Okay? And it changes everything. Whoa, totally changes everything. Think for a second. You're out in space. You need resources. Oh, nature is not effing around. That is the perfect. Okay, listen, if you don't know, go read the book. It's fantastic. It's on Audible. It's easy. And the second one's the best. It's like Star Wars. The second one was the Empire Strikes Back is the best, and then not Death's End, but The Dark Forest is the best in this. Enough. Okay. So nature's not effing around with space. That's how you make humans native to space and not the Earth, and keep some humans on the Earth and have those other humans native to space. You don't have to go generations. It's not biological evolution. They just have to change their minds. Whoa. Things get real. Nature's not effing around. Okay. Hypothesis number 2, human technology risks are growing faster than their mitigation. By the way, if you want the short versions of all these hypotheses, go to our website. It's one of the blog posts. It's got the word brief in it. Just search. Command F or Control F on a web page. By the way, a lot of people don't know that. They can't they don't know that you can search a whole web page and a lot of documents just by Control F or Command F. Do that. It's easy. It's great. Okay, human technology risks are growing faster than their mitigation. That's easy. Artificial intelligence kills us all. Nanotech kills us all. Genetics makes up superhumans who can kill us all. That's easy. Hypothesis number 3, death. Human lifespan is being prolonged by new technology. Again, easy. If you've got some people who are living 150 years and other people who are living 150 months, who's going to win in a contest between the two? No matter what the numbers are in the latter group, blah, blah, blah. 150 months is not long enough to have more numbers. But anyway, hypothesis number 4, China, easy, a global war between... Okay, so we can keep going down the hypothesis list. Civil war is the next one. Environment, we're changing our environment more quickly than we can adapt to it. Depends on which environment, though. What's our environment? Is it the solar system? Is it the Earth? Or is space itself? Because, the solar system is more space than anything else. Betterment is hypothesis number 7. Some things make the future better than the past. conversely, nature's not effing around to make some part of the world or the universe better is to also to leave behind the part that wasn't good. I don't know. Forget that. I can't finish that thought. And all the way down to hypothesis number 2. If I go through all these, it's gonna fill up the whole segment. We'll do that later. The deadline problem. How do you allocate resources when the real deadline is unknown? How do you allocate resources? You, us, whatever we groups you're a part of. Are you what's your group? What's your unit? I mean, what's your civilization? Carol. No, I'm not talking about Carol Quigley because then I have to talk about too much. What's your civilization? Not your country. Which civilization are you a part of? Of which civilization are you a part? Do you just think of yourself as being like a member of a family? What happens when the power goes out? If unless you're just going to sit in the house and hope, you're going to become quickly a part of the people, the community of people around you, but not the whole community because there are going to be bad guys there. Nature is not effing around. You're not going to be, unless you're a bad guy. Screw you, bad guys. But don't worry, I know you're out there. We all know you're out there. Sometimes you listen to podcasts and watch YouTube. You're not a part of one we, and your group we can change. How do you allocate resources in that group? Individually for yourself, but then in the group, and then the multiple groups. And then, it's hard, right? You got to do a bunch of math if you want to do it perfectly, even taking into consideration the mathematical ways of dealing with things like uncertainty, which exist, but they're laborious and they're usually not necessary. We're usually just sort of shooting from the hip, sort of heuristics and biases style. Kahneman and Tversky. I don't know how to pronounce Tversky's last name, which is Tversky, as far as I'm going to pronounce it. We're shooting from the hip. We're not doing the math, but suppose we could. Suppose we develop, the right apps, or a user interface for software that does a really good job doing the math on decision theory, and applying decision theory in a practical way, the way that cell phones applied communication theory and other things in a practical way to our daily lives and improve them thereby. How do you allocate resources? You don't know when the deadline is. You don't know when the real deadline. I'm not talking about measure what matters and OKRs and all these other things that belong on margin. I shouldn't bring them up on Retraice, but how do you allocate resources if deadlines are in the future is largely uncertain, the deadlines, which are in the future, are therefore largely uncertain. And also, by the way, if deadlines are uncertain, allocating resources is uncertain, and allocating resources changes deadlines. The guy who talked about deliberation. Look in the PDF notes. I'm going to go dig this up. Philosopher, what was his book about? I think it was about time, paradoxes of time. And he talked about, it wasn't, how do I not know? It's because it was 2 years ago that I read it, or 3, 4, I don't know. But I'll dig it out. I know I can find it easily. I can't remember which philosopher did that book. It wasn't, was it Horwich? No, it doesn't matter. Deliberation can change. Forget that. I can't go into that. Allocating resources changes deadlines. What's a toy example? It's easy. There's a train coming at you, and you devote some calories to getting out of its way. Now, no, it's better. The IIHS, this is better. You can, if you're in the market for a car, you should go in the United States. I don't know how well this will translate outside of the United States, but you can find an equivalent. It translates well in Australia. If you're in the market for a car and you care about safety, then you should consider the reviews and the reviews is like too weak a word for what they do. The QA, the quality control tests that they do, that the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety does on new vehicles. And one of the things you can watch is super slow motion crash tests all day long of every vehicle that they've tested, which is all the new ones. What you're watching there, when you watch like the small front overlap, that's the key accident, by the way, if you're interested in this stuff, the small front overlap. You're watching a deadline unfold. There's a deadline for that car. And the poor dummies, oh man. It's going at 40 miles an hour. I think I don't know, it's been a while, but I think they still test at 40. But by the way, 40 miles an hour is so low. Like, think about the accidents you might be in, especially small front overlap, 2-lane highway stuff. 40 miles an hour is not the speed you're going to be going. You're going to each be going 40 miles an hour. So the collision is going to be 80 miles an hour. But anyway, that's not what they test. They test 40 miles an hour into a brick wall, and not full frontal, collision, partial overlap. And which it does a lot more damage because all the energy, or a lot more of the energy is crammed into, right in front of the driver's side and causes all kinds of havoc in the vehicle. That's a deadline. Poor car, poor dummy. They didn't know. We knew, thanks to a few things called neurons. That's stupid. It's not just a few things called neurons. Honeybees have neurons too, but they didn't know about the IIHS. What if we devoted some resources to just turning the steering wheel? There's nobody in the car, but we could by radio and electrical, by actuators, turn the steering wheel. Now you've changed the deadline. The deadline was we're about to crash into a wall, and then you turn a little knob, a little, what do they call the pot thing? The potentiometer. Is that what it is? Turn it, radio signal, car steers, misses the wall. Resources have been allocated and have affected the deadline for that car. You can do that with anything. So that adds a lot of, it adds the human, right? Like a honeybee is not going to allocate those resources. The whole hive could be capable of turning the relevant knob, but they're not going to. This is a human thing that happens. This is not happening without us. That's the gist of what I want to call a deadline problem. How the heck are we supposed to allocate resources? Not how the heck, like we do it, but darn it, it's so easy. Look, think about the Fermi paradox, the idea that, it seems like the universe is a good place to grow life, and we don't see any obvious evidence of it. Unless it's hiding from us, it seems like there might not be very much of it. Why? Is everybody crashing into deadlines? Great filters is sometimes what the phrase that's used. And if so, and if, what if we don't have a way of getting past the fog of the future? How do you allocate resources? We're on the precipice. Tony Ord, global catastrophic risks. Deadline problem. What's the real deadline? How do we allocate resources if we don't have, and it could be, it doesn't have to be one. You don't have to be looking for the great filter or several filters. It could be one that's already obvious to us, like nuclear weapons, environmental collapse. These are covered in the hypotheses. That's just the beginning of the deadline problem. There is so much that follows from this problem. There is so much that seems like it might be worth doing in response to this problem. But first we had to introduce it. All right. That's it. References from this segment will be in the show notes or linked in the RSS show notes. Full PDF notes will be at retraice.com, retraice.com. This is Retraice segment number 20. And maybe actually, I was going to say maybe we'll do it again tomorrow. We're going to do it again in about 10 minutes because we're going to do another segment here, taking this a little bit further. Time's up.